The scrapping of the Scottish Government's 2030 emissions target has also upset the Scottish Greens. There have even been calls from party members to vote on keeping the coalition deal with the SNP. Greens co-leader Patrick Harvey has warned that if his party votes to drop the agreement, he will quit as co-leader.
Our political correspondent Jamie Smith's been speaking to political scientist Professor Sir John Curtice about the fallout.
So the Greens were talking about the agreement, the Butehouse agreement this week. Was it perhaps expected that they might say they would pull back from it?
Well, I'm not sure it was expected, but in the wake of the announcement last week by the Net Zero Secretary that the Scottish Government was going to abandon the current legal deadline for getting emissions down by 2030, you can understand why Green members, some of them might be unhappy about that. We also had the report from the CAS report on the giving treatment for transgender people, their medical treatment, and particularly puberty blockers. We know that Green activists tend to be particularly sympathetic to those who have a transgender identity. So those two things together seem to have resulted in some Green members being sufficiently unhappy, saying, well, hang on, perhaps we should be reconsidering our relationship with the Scottish Government.
Is there more concern in the Green Party about this matter, or should the SNP be concerned?
Well, certainly, of course, the relationship with the Greens is a source of division within the SNP itself. The problem that both the SNP and the Greens have to consider, however, is whether or not they are better off together or whether they are better off apart. If they cannot make that work, we might be precipitated into an early Scottish Parliament general election next year, and that could be something that could do damage to both of the parties.
Professor Sir John Curtice. And Jamie Smith joins us now in the studio. Jamie, how has this fallout been received by the Greens' partners in the government, the SNP?
Yeah, well, as we can see, there's definitely tension in the air. It's a conundrum for both the Greens and the SNP. In fact, Humza Yousaf did say, however, this was a decision for the Green Party and Green Party members to make as to whether they would step back from the coalition. However, he has hoped that they would stay in government with the SNP. Division in the SNP on this subject. Anyway, former SNP MSP Alex Neil called for the agreement to be ditched. Kate Forbes, Fergus Ewing, they were also very critical of the coalition over the years, not smooth sailing overall.
And if this deal falls apart, what other options are there?
Yeah, well, as we saw there, talking to Sir John Curtice, in fact, the political landscape has changed a lot since 2011. It's very unlikely now that the Conservatives would help at all to push through a budget with the SNP. But also the Scottish Labour Party is unlikely to help out, given their focus on the UK general elections. Lib Dems a similar picture, hoping to displace the SNP as third biggest party at Westminster.
And what's the latest with the Green Party itself?
Well, as we saw earlier, Patrick Harvey said he would step down as co-leader if ultimately this decision goes through to come back from the coalition.
Great, thank you so much, Jamie.
Thank you.